I'm a defective Omega, and I'm mute. My partner is an S-class alpha. He doesn't love me. He was forced to marry me because of family pressure. After he lost control during his rut one time, I got pregnant. My hands trembled as I gave him the ultrasound photo, ready to sign to him. But he didn't even look at it. He just ripped it to shreds and warned me with a cold expression, "Even if you have a child, don't you ever think I'll love you?" I lowered my eyes, stared at the scattered pieces on the floor, and nodded. Actually, it wasn't just the ultrasound photo that he tore up. There was a terminal diagnosis tucked inside it to Jason. Jason was furious when he found out I was pregnant. He crushed a glass with his bare hand, letting the shards dig deep into his palm. Only then did he grit his teeth and demand, "Was it that accident 3 months ago?" I'm mute. I couldn't speak. I could only clench my sweaty fists and nod frantically. This child was from that accident 3 months ago. He'd gone into a sudden rut and hadn't had time to take his suppressants. When his grandfather found out, he rushed over that night and locked the two of us in a bedroom. The door was locked from the outside. No matter how hard I pounded on it, no one came. Jason still had a shred of sanity left. He yelled at me not to move and leaned against the corner, trying to fight it. The first half of the night was hell, but thankfully he was an S-class alpha and managed to restrain himself even without suppressants. But I'm just a defective Omega. The room was saturated with his alpha pheromones, and I completely lost control of my own. The scent of orange blossoms filled the air. In the middle of the night, Jason couldn't hold back any longer. My Omega pheromones drove him past the point of reason. He lunged at me like a starving wolf, brutally biting the back of my neck. His pheromones flooded my bloodstream, and the pain brought involuntary tears to my eyes. I tried to get away, but he held me in an iron grip. Lost in his rut, the alpha had lost his mind. He forgot I was the Omega he despised most, forgot his vow to save himself for his first love. He marked me with an almost frantic desperation, thrusting into me wildly. My defective gland couldn't handle his violent marking. For 3 days, I passed out and woke up over and over. By the end, the room was a wreck, and my body was covered in bruises. There wasn't an inch of me that wasn't black and blue. And because of that, I'd been nauseous on and off for 3 months. I went to the hospital this morning, originally just to go with a friend. I've always had a weak constitution. High fevers and vomiting have been a regular part of my life since I was a kid, so I didn't think much of it this time. My friend was the one who insisted I get a checkup. I never imagined that one checkup would reveal a pregnancy and early-stage stomach cancer. The vomiting was from the pregnancy, but also from the illness. The doctor's face was grim as he told me I should terminate the pregnancy to start treatment. Just then, Jason called and told me to come home. He'd been avoiding me for 3 months, but Grandpa was coming over for an inspection this afternoon. He had no choice but to fly back and come home. He snatched the ultrasound from my hand with a dark look on his face. Without even glancing at it, he tore it into tiny pieces, along with the terminal diagnosis I had tucked inside. I raised my hand, wanting to sign to him about the cancer, but he grabbed my wrist. "Evan, stop playing the innocent victim." Jason's brow furrowed as he gave me a cold warning. "Even if you have this baby, don't you dare think I'll love you or that you could ever replace him. Understand? Don't forget, you're the one who used my grandfather to drive him away and force me to marry you." I lowered my eyes. After staring at the scraps of paper on the floor for a long time, I gave up trying to sign and just nodded. He was right. I was the one who indirectly broke them up and forced Jason to marry me. I owed him. Before he married me, Jason had been deeply in love with a top-tier Omega. They met in college and were together for 3 years, on the verge of getting engaged. But that's when Mr. Smith, Jason's grandfather, found me and brought me into the Smith family home. As the orphan child of a man who had saved the family, Grandpa announced that whoever married me would become the future head of the Smith Corporation. The alphas in the Smith family immediately started fawning over me, all except for Jason, who had been raised as the heir apparent and was impeccable in both character and ability. He disdained the idea of abandoning his love for power, but I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that he had once saved me from a fire, leaving a permanent scar on his right arm. I had remembered that scar for more than 7 years. Coincidentally, to test the alpha's sincerity, Grandpa had set up a scenario to see who would risk their life to save me. Among all the alphas in that deserted suburb, only Jason, who had been forced to be there, was willing to stab himself to be taken as a hostage in my place. I used that as my reason and chose him. He'd acted so quickly that he was unconscious in the hospital, unable to object, when Grandpa arranged our marriage. The news of the Smith family heir's wedding spread through the city like wildfire. By the time Jason woke up and wanted to back out, it was too late. If he called off the engagement, I would become a public laughingstock, the subject of everyone's gossip. Jason knew what that would mean for an Omega. Grandpa used that bit of compassion to force him to marry me. Only after we were married did I learn the truth. His heart already belonged to someone else, and I was the one who had torn them apart. That evening, Grandpa came to check on us. When he found the pieces of the ultrasound, he immediately had his secretary draw up a stock transfer agreement signing all of his shares over to our unborn child. Seeing his pure joy, I let my hands, which had been ready to sign, fall to my sides again. Grandpa had always wanted a great-grandchild, and Jason had always wanted the inheritance and his lover. I could make all of that happen as long as I gave up on treatment and had this baby. I stopped fighting it. Faced with all the wonderful hopes Grandpa had for this child, I smiled and nodded along. With the shares in the child's name, they wouldn't have a bad life without me. In fact, they might even grow up in a harmonious, loving family instead of a cold one like this. Evan, stop dreaming. After Grandpa left, Jason suddenly gripped my face, forcing down the smile I had plastered on. He warned me with a dark expression, "None of that will ever happen. And this child will never be your bargaining chip to climb the ladder in the Smith family. Don't you dare get any more delusional ideas. Got it?" My jaw ached where he was squeezing it. I stared at his furious face for a long time before forcing a smile. I nodded and signed, "Yes, I got it. I really won't hold you back anymore, Jason." The next day, Jason left for another business trip abroad. Everyone except Grandpa knew he was looking for Cameron. When Cameron heard about Jason's engagement, he'd left the country without listening to any explanations and vanished off the face of the earth. He'd been gone for 2 years, and Jason had been searching for him for 2 years. I had to go to my prenatal checkups and buy synthetic pheromones by myself. On the way, I ran into the doctor from before. He frowned when he saw the prenatal report in my hand. "Evan, are you planning to refuse treatment?" I was a little surprised. I put the report away and signed. "Dr. Chase, how do you remember my name?" Chase could understand sign language. He sighed. "You really don't remember. We were high school classmates, Evan." I froze. In high school, I was the poorest kid in our class. I was used to burying myself in my studies in a corner, and I didn't know anyone except for Jason, who had actively approached me. I was about to sign an apology when Chase grabbed my wrist, pulled me into his office, and frantically dug out my file from the other day. "This is still early stage. If you terminate the pregnancy, it's treatable. Listen to me. Get rid of the baby. I'll help you get better." I gave a bitter smile and shook my head. After thanking him, I told him I was determined to keep the baby and refuse treatment. Chase's expression immediately soured. "Is it because of that alpha husband of yours? He won't let you?" Quickly waved my hands. "I want to keep this child for myself. After all, I owed Jason 2 lives. I had to pay him back, right?" Chase didn't say anything else that day. But afterward, every time I went to the hospital for a checkup or to buy synthetic pheromones and medicine, he would urge me to start chemo. I refused every single time. He never got angry, just kept trying, never tiring of it. It wasn't until I was hospitalized after fainting from overusing synthetic alpha pheromones that Chase finally grabbed my shoulders, genuinely angry. "Evan, you have your whole life ahead of you. Why are you throwing it all away for one alpha? He doesn't deserve." I knew he was just being a good doctor, so I signed an apology. But his face was grim, and he wouldn't let go. A faint trace of a calming pheromone, unique to an S-class alpha, even filled the air. The light scent of juniper eased my discomfort. "I can do what he can't." Chase raised a hand to the back of my neck, his voice suddenly choked with emotion. "Evan, can't you just turn around and look at me? Just once?" I snapped back to reality. I covered my mouth and nose, trying to pull away, but another, stronger scent of cedar aggressively cut through the air, blocking the juniper. With a loud bang, The door to my hospital room was kicked open. Jason, who was supposed to be overseas on business, suddenly appeared at the door, his fists clenched so tight they cracked. Whether I deserve her or not is none of your goddamn business, you unethical piece of trash. Evan, get out here. You're coming home with me. Jason almost got into a fistfight with Chase. Because I had hurt my leg when I fainted, I didn't have the strength to get out of bed. So he took all his anger out on Chase. I couldn't speak to stop them, so in the end, I had to drag my exhausted body out of bed and use a table for support to get between them. The punch that was about to land on Chase's face was stopped by me. Jason looked like he wanted to say something, but he just gritted his teeth and slammed his fist into the wooden table next to him instead. Then he roughly pulled me up, carried me out, and threw me into the car. The tension on the way home was suffocating. The moment we got back, I couldn't stop myself from retching. I stayed in the bathroom, vomiting until my head spun and my vision blurred. Dimly, I saw a splash of bright red near my hand. Just as Jason pushed the door open, I frantically wiped away the blood and flushed the toilet. His face was as dark as ink, but he handed me a glass of warm water. From now on, I'm staying home to take care of you. I'll provide the pheromones you need and find a private doctor. You are not to see that alpha doctor again. I looked up in shock, my heart skipping a beat. He quickly added, it was Grandpa. He forced me to come back by threatening me with the company. I smiled to myself. Of course. I signed my thanks, took the water, and turned to rinse my mouth. My movements were slow. After a while, I thought he had left. I was rubbing my swollen ankle, about to push myself up, when a pair of strong hands wrapped around my waist and lifted me into his arms. A faint scent of cedar surrounded me. Jason knelt by the bed to apply medicine to my ankle, his voice cold. It's for the baby. Don't get any ideas. Maybe this baby really was that important. The next day, Jason stopped speaking harshly to me. He even started working from home to personally oversee my care. Our relationship eased considerably. When Chase saw I wasn't coming to the hospital, he called me several times. But each time, Jason would grab the phone and hang up before I could answer. Grandpa was keeping him on a tight leash, and he wouldn't leave my side. He brought a spoonful of soup to my lips. I choked and started coughing violently. The air once again filled with his calming pheromones as a warm hand rested on the back of my neck. When you're done coughing, open your mouth. Eat. I swallowed the metallic taste of blood in my throat. Because of the temporary mark, the gland he had once bitten was itching. The baby in my belly was also heavily dependent on its alpha father's pheromones, making it impossible for me to resist. I silently accepted the childish act of being fed. For the next week, I was forced to accept Jason's care. That included him providing pheromones by kissing my gland. I knew he was doing it for the baby, but Cameron, who had been gone for 2 years, chose that moment to barge into the Smith house and witness this intimate scene. He had no idea. His pupils contracted, and his eyes filled with tears as he stared at us. Jason, you really have a child? You're really together? The hand on the back of my neck suddenly tightened. The butler rushed in, panting, and explained, I'm sorry, young master. I couldn't stop Mr. Cameron. Cameron turned and ran out. Seeing his first love again after 2 years, Jason was stunned. He shoved me away and chased after him without even grabbing his coat. It was below freezing outside. The chaotic, shocked pheromones fluctuating in the cold air made me feel physically sick. No one had expected Cameron to come back at a time like this. That night, I spent a long time retching in the bathroom. My stomach was in agony, but I couldn't take any painkillers. My face was as white as a sheet, which scared the butler. He frantically tried to call Jason, but the call wouldn't go through. My breathing was shallow as I shook my head, signaling him to just let it go. Once the spout of pain passed, I'd be fine. But I had overestimated myself. After passing out from the pain, I woke up in the hospital. The butler was talking to Chase about something. Seeing I was conscious, he sighed in relief. Thank goodness Dr. Chase understands your condition. Evan, I was on the phone, and he immediately brought his things over to treat you. Alfred, the butler, worked for Grandpa and was terrified of anything happening to me. Once Chase assured him I was really okay, he sent him downstairs to pick up my medication. I frantically signed. Did you tell him about my illness? Chase's brow was furrowed. his usually calm and gentle face showing his displeasure. "Evan, after everything that's happened, you're still worried about him?" I lowered my eyes and nodded. "I'm sorry, but I don't want him to." No. Completely at a loss, Chase ran a hand over his face. "As long as you don't agree, I won't tell them about your condition." "Thank you." I pulled out my phone, ready to leave, but he grabbed my hand again. "Evan, divorce him. I'll take care of you. I'll help you get better. Do you have any idea how many years I've been waiting for you?" My memories of high school are a bit blurry. The clearest impression I have is of Jason, who was sent to the countryside by his family to experience life and followed me around all day. Back then, he wasn't as cold as he is now. I was the one who pushed everyone away. After my biological parents died in an accident when I was 5, I became insecure, sensitive, and withdrawn at the orphanage. Every day after my 5th birthday, someone was calling me a monster or autistic. I gradually got used to the malice and the silence. But in my first year of high school, Jason, who moved into my dorm, wasn't used to it. He would confront the people who made passive-aggressive jabs at me and fight off the bullies. He'd pile my bowl with food, claiming he was on a diet, and give me half of his already double-portioned breakfast. He was also a chatterbox, tirelessly following me around, and after a year, he got me to speak. I said thank you. He was shocked. "Little mute, you can talk?" I smiled and said, "Yeah." After that, he tried every day to get me to talk. It was as if I'd become a normal person, gradually daring to speak my mind. But life is never perfect. Just when I was closest to a happy life, a fire broke out at the place where I worked part-time. I should have died there. It was Jason who ignored everyone's warnings, rushed in, and saved me. Halfway out, a thick wooden beam fell and hit him. The smoke poisoned my vocal cords and I passed out. When I woke up in the hospital, the doctors told me the Smith family had taken Jason away and transferred him to a hospital abroad. I spent all the money I had, but I couldn't find him until the year I graduated from college. Mr. Smith brought me back to the Smith family and told me to pick an alpha I liked at a banquet. Seeing him again after 7 years, the wine glass in my hand shattered on the floor. But Jason, dressed in a sharp suit, just glanced back at me, his expression completely blank. It was as if he didn't want to acknowledge me anymore. "I'm sorry, I really don't remember you." I signed apologetically to Chase, unable to recall when we had ever met. "I guess so. When you think back to that time, you're like a lost soul. Why would you notice who was by your side?" He laughed at himself and didn't bring up the past again. He also couldn't stop me from leaving. I didn't want to stay in the hospital, not because I disliked him, but because I hated the smell of disinfectant. It reminded me of the car crash when I was 5 and the fire when I was 17. After picking up my medicine and heading home, I saw Jason's Bugatti parked neatly in the driveway. Getting out of the car with him was Cameron. He looked at me with tear-filled eyes, appearing utterly pitiful. Jason stood in front of him. "He just got back to the country. He'll be staying here for a while." I nodded and turned to leave, but Jason grabbed me again. "Alfred said you were sick this afternoon. Was that a lie to get me to come back?" I clutched the test results and medicine in my hand. Chase had given them to me specifically to warn me that my condition was worsening. I couldn't free a hand to explain, which made Jason's face darken as he sneered. "Don't play these kinds of games next time. It's pathetic." I turned my face away and nodded. After that, Jason stopped being close to me. I started using synthetic pheromones again, and each day became harder to bear. My illness got much worse. I'd wake up in pain every morning, and the morning sickness on top of it was hell. I was always vomiting until the world spun. Whenever that happened, Cameron would emerge from the guest room, his eyes red, staring at my stomach as if he were about to cry. Hearing the noise, Jason would immediately block his view and slam the bathroom door shut. I wiped the blood from my lips and smiled. Good thing he didn't come in. It wouldn't be good if he saw the blood in the toilet. On the 3rd day of Cameron's stay, Jason had an urgent matter at the office and had to leave. Grandpa had spies at the company, so he couldn't take Cameron with him. The other servants in the villa had been dismissed, so he could only warn me to stay away from Cameron. "He won't cross any lines before you have the baby. He's just staying here temporarily, so don't go after him." He still remembered the time I faked being sick to manipulate him and was wary of me. I signed earnestly, "Don't worry. I don't dislike him. I won't do anything to him. In the end, I was the ignorant one who had selfishly torn them apart. Jason looked at me, half believing. In the entryway, he suddenly hugged me and gave me some of his pheromones. The calming scent of cedar eased my discomfort. But as I turned my head, feeling a little lightheaded, I saw him. Cameron had shed the gentle, sweet persona he'd maintained for days. He stood on the spiral staircase, arms crossed, glaring down at me with gritted teeth. Less than half an hour after Jason left, he came speeding back. He pushed open the door to a sea of crimson. Someone's blood was all over the floor. I looked up numbly, my eyes meeting his stunned gaze as my trembling hand reached out and then pulled back. Jason realized it wasn't me who was hurt. He scrambled to his feet and rushed to the other side of the spiral staircase. He picked up the unconscious Cameron and raced to the hospital. The light outside the operating room lit up. I had followed them in a cab and arrived, out of breath, only to have Jason suddenly grab me by the throat. The veins on his arms bulged, and his eyes were bloodshot with rage. "Evan, I never realized you were capable of something so vicious, so evil." I was already in shock from seeing Cameron fall down the stairs. Tears streamed down my face as I desperately shook my head and signed. It wasn't me. After he left, Cameron had stood on the stairs, taunting me with cruel words. I didn't care, but he made me stand by the staircase, and then he threw himself down, rolling to my feet. When you're terrified, your mind is a mess. Jason couldn't understand my frantic, jumbled signs, and the retaliatory force of his grip didn't lessen. I was being choked, on the verge of suffocating, when another hand suddenly appeared and pulled me away. The sudden rush of fresh air made me stumble. Chase steadied me and then punched Jason. "I gave him back to you, and this is how you treat him?" Already furious, Jason's anger exploded. He pushed me aside and started fighting with him. "What right does an outsider like you have to interfere in our business? Evan is my Omega, and it's none of your damn business how I treat him." "Your Omega? Ha!" Chase sneered. "Ask yourself, in the 2 years you've been married, do you even know him? If you really knew him, how could you possibly think he would ever hurt anyone?" "Jason, you're hopelessly stupid. Do you have any idea that Evan is—" A loud crash sounded from behind me. Jason quickly caught me as I collapsed, a look of bewilderment on his face. What's wrong with him? You have the nerve to ask." Before Chase could finish, the operating room doors opened. The surgeon, without even taking off his mask, asked urgently, "Who is the patient's family? Come with me." Chase grabbed my wrist, trying to take me, but Jason held on tight, refusing to let go. "Aren't you worried about your precious old flame? If you don't go now, he might actually die on that operating table." Chase gave him a sarcastic look. Finally, with a hard tug, he pulled me into his arms. When I woke up again, it was a week later. For that entire week, Jason had stayed by Cameron's bedside in the VIP suite, never leaving his side. Naturally, he had no idea that my illness had progressed to the point where it was completely untreatable. After getting up and having some tests done, I begged Chase not to tell anyone. He nodded, his eyes red, and prescribed me some painkillers with minimal side effects. "I'm sorry. I thought if I didn't give you painkillers, you might change your mind. I never thought you'd rather pass out from the pain than get treated. From now on, I'll just act as a regular doctor and respect your choices." Painkillers without side effects existed. He just hadn't prescribed them before. I smiled and told him it was okay, then thanked him. After another doctor called Chase away, I asked a nurse for Cameron's room number. I wanted to explain what happened that day, but before I even entered the room, I heard the sound of shattering glass from inside. Cameron was sobbing his heart out. How could I possibly use my own career to frame him? "Jason, you have to believe me. He really did push me. He's the reason I can't dance anymore." The fruit basket in my hand fell to the floor with a thud. Hearing the noise, Jason opened the door, his face grim. Cameron, breaking down, screamed at me to get out. I was flustered, trying to sign an explanation, but Jason grabbed my wrist. "At this point, does it even matter whether it was you or not?" His voice was laced with poison, as cold as ice. "Evan, this is the second time you've ruined him, made his life a living hell." Jason didn't investigate any further. There was no security footage of that day, no witnesses, and all the evidence had been destroyed. He placated Cameron and, using my pregnancy as an excuse, dropped the matter. But after leaving the hospital, Cameron, now in a wheelchair, wasn't willing to let it go. With no servants at home, whenever Jason had to leave, he would start ordering me around. He made me cook boiling hot porridge, only to accidentally spill it on my arm. He told me to bend down and tie his shoes, only to plant his foot on my shoulder. He wanted to see the flowers in the garden, only to shove me into the fountain. The freezing water made me shiver uncontrollably. I climbed out of the fountain, shook myself off, and couldn't take it anymore. Cameron, you don't have to target me. I'm not going to cling to Jason in the future. What are you signing? Oh, sorry. I don't understand sign language. That was just an accident. He feigned surprise, his face a mask of innocence. My teeth were chattering. After changing my clothes, I wrote down what I wanted to say on a piece of paper. I was about to show it to him when I realized he was gone. There were splashing sounds coming from the swimming pool in the basement. By the time I got there, I saw Jason diving into the deep end, desperately trying to pull someone out. Cameron shivered in his arms, crying and framing me again. After settling him down, Jason stood up, walked straight toward me, and his dark gaze fell on the paper I was clutching. It read, "After the baby is born, I will leave him. I will never bother him again." I thought the words would prove my innocence, so I eagerly held it out to him. But after Jason read it, he wasn't happy like I expected. His face grew darker, becoming terrifying. He practically ground his teeth as he demanded, "You're saying you'll leave after the baby is born? Leave the Smith family forever?" I nodded like a bobblehead. "Don't worry, I'll leave the baby with you, and I'll disappear completely. Rip." Jason tore the paper apart in a sudden rage. Ignoring Cameron behind him, he stormed out of the pool area. Maybe because I'd been out in the cold, I developed a high fever that night. The complications from the cold woke me up in agony. I fumbled for my painkillers but couldn't find them anywhere. Then I remembered. Cameron had taken my wet clothes from earlier today. The pills were in the pocket. I forced myself to get up, enduring the pain, and knocked on the guest room door. Cameron was still awake, casually playing with the small bottle. "Morphine extended release tablets. What are these for?" I signed, begging him to give them back. But he just dumped the pills on the floor with a smirk. "You shouldn't be taking random pills when you're pregnant. I'm doing this for your own good, you know?" I was in too much pain to argue. I knelt on the floor, trying to pick up any salvageable pills, but he stepped on my hand. Couldn't break free. Then the door opened. Cameron instantly pulled his foot back and lied to Jason, claiming I was trying to take abortion pills and he had stopped me. "If he took those, wouldn't he just keep clinging to you for years, Jason? Then what about us?" He choked up, tears welling in his eyes. The listener actually believed him. He let out a cold laugh, but he wasn't particularly angry. He just had an "I knew it" tone. "Evan, I should have known you wouldn't give up so easily. After all the schemes you pulled to force me to marry you, why would you ever obediently leave after having the baby? You really are." I couldn't hear the rest of his words very clearly. The taste of blood I'd been swallowing kept rising in my throat, and I couldn't hold it back anymore. Right in front of him, I vomited all over the floor. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital room filled with the smell of disinfectant. I instinctively frowned. A hand quickly reached out and smoothed my brow. It carried a rich scent of cedar. "If the baby needs pheromones, you can just say so." My lashes fluttered. I let out a sigh of relief. Good, he still didn't know the truth. This must be the downtown hospital again. Dr. Chase, on his rounds, looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I probably really didn't have much time left. I was exhausted from the endless accusations and setups. So when Chase was arguing with Jason, demanding to take me with him, I made an effort to get their attention and signed to them I was willing to go with Chase. I didn't want to go back to the Smith family, to face the endless suspicion and torment. Even when he promised to take good care of me from now on, to prevent any more conflict. Jason was stunned. "Evan, what did you say?" I repeated myself. For 2 years, I had waited for him at home, playing the part of a dutiful Omega wife, even though I knew it was pointless. What he saw as an act to climb the social ladder was my genuine heart. But this time I had truly given up. Jason, being left for the first time, was furious. He finally just stormed out. After he left, I spent a few days recovering in the hospital. I was barely well enough to be discharged. But I didn't go with Chase. I was a dying man, and I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. And I didn't have the courage to start a new life. I rented an apartment near the hospital to wait out my pregnancy. Living alone was much more peaceful. But Jason started talking more. Ever since I left the hospital, he'd been messaging me every day, asking about all sorts of small things, using the baby as an excuse. I selectively replied to a few messages. Jason quickly followed up with a video call, making me walk around as if he were checking up on me. I sighed and told him, "Dr. Chase is at the hospital. He'll be back tonight to check on me." He had consented to Chase living with me, largely because a doctor could conveniently monitor the baby. Ours was a marriage of convenience. He didn't care which alpha I lived with. But after hearing this, Jason's face darkened, and he hung up. That night, I don't know how he found my address. He started pounding on the door. The moment I unlocked it, he stumbled into the apartment, reeking of alcohol, and searched every single room. "He's not off work yet?" I nodded guiltily. He staggered a few steps and then suddenly collapsed onto me, pinning me to the sofa.
"Sorry, I'm drunk."
Jason leaned in close to the back of my neck, closed his eyes, and kissed my gland. I pushed him away, but he grabbed my hands and sealed my lips with his. The air filled with the appeasing scent of cedar. My eyes went wide. My mind was a blank slate as he kissed me, and it took me a long moment to remember to struggle. This was the first time we had ever done something like this. Even during that accident 3 months ago, no matter how lost in a frenzy he had never kissed me. He really was drunk. After I broke free, the drunkard seemed displeased. His voice was laced with resentment. "Who the hell is Chase? What's your history with him? Why does he seem to know you so well, know everything about you?" I froze. You don't know him? In high school, Jason was popular and could get along with anyone. He should have had a strong impression of someone with Chase's background and looks. But Jason sneered. Should I know him? He gritted his teeth. A scumbag with no morals. A homewrecker who only knows how to steal other people's partners. A two-faced schemer who acts like he knows everything just because he met you earlier. I was completely stunned. I was so shocked I didn't even register Jason's uncharacteristic cursing. I quickly asked, You really don't remember him or 10 years ago? I had always thought Jason regretted getting close to me and saving me back then, which was why he never came back to find me and pretended not to know me when we met again. But he shook his head. I really don't remember. I had an accident when I was 17 and I think I lost some of my memory. Was there something important in there? I didn't tell him about the past. It seemed any chance for a turnaround had come too late. Fate still loved to play its cruel jokes. Jason didn't understand my sadness. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me closer, his fingers pressing into the bruises there. I grunted in pain. He paused, then suddenly pushed up my sleeve. From my wrist to my arm were all sorts of burns and bruises Cameron had inflicted while he was gone. Jason stared at the marks as if he'd been struck by lightning, half of his drunkenness gone. He gritted his teeth, his voice dark. Who the hell did this? I started to sign, but then hesitated. The answer was so obvious, yet he still didn't suspect Cameron. They must have really trusted each other in college. The things Cameron did to me were just because he loved Jason too much. There was no need for me to stir up more trouble between them. So I changed my sign. I did it myself. By accident. A flash of pain crossed his eyes. His knuckles turned white as he found some ointment and started applying it for me. When he finished, he hugged me and murmured, Evan, he seemed to have something he wanted to say to me. But in the end, the words never came. Perhaps it was the pheromones, but I slept surprisingly well that night. The next morning, Jason woke up, abruptly let go of my waist, and tried to play it cool. Last night, I know. It was for the baby. I signed, cutting him off. The baby was already 7 months along and desperately needed its alpha father's natural pheromones. But his eyes darkened. He stared at my slightly rounded stomach for a long time before giving a stiff right. A week later, Grandpa returned to the country and hosted a family dinner at the estate. He didn't know that Cameron was also back, let alone living in the Smith family home. Before we left, Jason sternly warned me again not to say anything about Cameron. Alfred and the servants are gone. Only you and I know about this. I nodded in agreement. But when we arrived, Grandpa, having gotten the news from somewhere, had Cameron tied up in the dining room. I heard that since he's been back, he's been framing Evan. Upset him so much he ended up in the hospital and almost had a miscarriage? The old man's cloudy eyes were as sharp as a snake's, darting between the gagged, sobbing Cameron and Jason. The dining room was dead silent. Jason's hand, forced to hold mine, tightened unconsciously. After a long moment, he finally spoke. "Grandpa, it's a misunderstanding, so you're saying Evan really did all those despicable things?" "No." Jason shot to his feet. "It has nothing to do with Evan. He would never do that. The Smith family rules were strict. Using dirty tricks to harm someone here, even if pregnant, meant a night of kneeling in the ancestral hall." But after defending me, Jason froze. He had said it without thinking, a gut reaction. He knew deep down that I would never do anything to hurt anyone. He just hadn't been willing to admit that Cameron would lie. Now that it was out in the open, in front of everyone, Grandpa was the first to smile. His anger turned to amusement. "Since you say it wasn't him, I believe you. But you don't need me to teach you what to do next, do you?" Jason kicked Cameron out of the Smith family home. He also rehired a team of servants and brought me back home. The day he left, Cameron clung to Jason's sleeve, sobbing uncontrollably. He still wouldn't admit to framing me, bringing up again how he couldn't dance anymore, crying pitifully. He thought Jason would be swayed by their past. But this time, Jason's eyes were filled with disappointment. He shook his hand off. "Let's leave each other with some dignity, Cameron." After having Cameron sent away, he turned his cold gaze on me. "Are you satisfied now, Evan? You've finally become the master of the Smith household. No one can threaten your position anymore. So don't ever bring up that stupid threat about leaving after the baby is born again." I didn't offer any defense. Left standing there, I bent over as a sharp pain shot through my stomach. After the late winter, the glaciers and snow-capped mountains would begin to melt. If I was lucky, maybe I really would live to see the mountain flowers bloom next spring. After Cameron left, Jason was down for a while but quickly pulled himself together. He became more focused on his work and on me. He suddenly couldn't understand why I was getting thinner as my pregnancy progressed. Putting his work aside, Jason began to take care of me seriously. This time was different from early in the pregnancy. He was much more skilled at caregiving now. The way he looked at me and moved when he gave me his pheromones was strangely gentle. Every time we went for a prenatal checkup, he deliberately prevented any contact between me and Chase, not even letting us exchange a single word. We had a period of peace. Just when I thought he had truly forgotten Cameron and would be this gentle to me until I died, I was kidnapped. That day, Jason had asked me out to dinner, saying he had something important to tell me. But he had an urgent meeting at his company. After the meeting, he sent his secretary to pick me up. On the way, an SUV forced our car to a stop, and armed kidnappers took me. They brought me, completely helpless, to an abandoned auto repair shop in the suburbs. In front of a pile of steel pipes, another person was tied up, Cameron, who was supposed to have left the city. He was bound tightly, but his face showed no fear. Before I could process anything, a gunshot shattered my thoughts. A kidnapper held Cameron hostage, backing into a corner, and fired a shot toward the opposite side. The person who had been forced to freeze in place was Jason. The kidnappers probably hadn't expected Jason to get there so fast. A sharp blade was pressed against my neck, drawing a startling line of blood along my skin. The man threatened Jason, "You've got two of them. Today you can use your money to buy one back. The other one stays with me as a hostage." A flicker of shock crossed Jason's panicked face. The scene was eerily similar to the kidnapping his grandfather had orchestrated 3 years ago. Back then, he had chosen to trade himself for me without hesitation. But this time, Cameron was brutally kicked in front of him, spitting up blood that pooled on the ground. He even managed a weak smile at Jason. "These guys are after me. Don't worry about me. Save him and your child." Before he could finish, another bloody gash was cut into Cameron's arm. Jason roared, "Stop!" The kidnappers gave him 1 minute to think. In that minute, Cameron cried and apologized over and over, saying he had only done those things before because he loved Jason so much and wanted him back. It sounded like the final confession of a dying man. Jason took a long, deep look at me. I was tied so tightly it was painful. My face was pale, and I couldn't even form a suggestive word with my lips. He quickly looked away. Just before the kidnapper's final warning, he spoke in a hoarse voice, "Give me Cameron." There was a second of dead silence. The bald man wielding an iron pipe burst into mocking laughter. "This Smith Corporation CEO is a real romantic, isn't he? Willing to ditch the Omega carrying his child for his first love. TSK. He wasted no more time, shoving Cameron into the hands of the grim-faced Jason and ordering his men to back away with me. Jason didn't look at me. He grabbed Cameron and fled the abandoned garage, disappearing from my sight. After crossing a field of tall grass, the Smith family's bodyguards, led by the secretary, finally arrived. But the situation was too urgent, and there was only one bodyguard. Jason threw Cameron to the bodyguard and was about to go back alone to save me. The secretary, who had just transferred the ransom money, grabbed him. "The police will be here in 10 minutes, Mr. Smith. Please wait. You can't fight all of them by yourself, but Evan is still in their hands." Jason's eyes were red. "Every minute he's their hostage, he's in more danger. If it comes to it, I'll take them all down with me." Ignoring the desperate pleas of his secretary and Cameron, he snatched an iron pipe from the bodyguard and charged back. But on the way, the distant garage burst into flames. The field of tall grass, only a few hundred yards away, was engulfed in black smoke, obscuring his vision. Jason froze, completely stunned. It felt like a string inside his brain had snapped. He rushed in recklessly, desperately searching for me. But in the end, there was nothing but ash and debris. The familiar scene sent a splitting headache through Jason, and memories flooded back like a tidal wave. He finally remembered the promise he made to a little mute boy when he was 17. He had clearly said that after the college entrance exams, he would take Evan home and make him his legal family. He swore he would take care of the quiet, withdrawn boy for the rest of his life, that he would never let him be bullied again, never let him have to live by anyone else's rules. But in the end, what had he done in the 2 years they were married by a twist of fate? He gave him the silent treatment, stayed away from home, deliberately let rumors of his affairs spread to Evan, breaking his heart. He humiliated him time and time again to protect someone he no longer loved. Just a short while ago, he had even assumed the kidnapping was another one of his grandfather's setups and abandoned Evan for his ex. He knew Evan was timid and hated pain more than anything. His heart ached with an unbearable, suffocating pain. That day, firefighters tried to pull him from the fire as he was trying to kill himself. But Jason pushed them away, clutching a bundle of rope and 2 diamond rings he never had the chance to give, and cried like a child who had done something terribly wrong. He refused to leave. He wanted to die with Evan. He was so close to confessing, to telling Evan he had fallen in love with him. They were so close to having a happy life as a family of 3. Now, that dream could only be fulfilled in the afterlife. The firefighters were at a loss. Finally, a police officer rushed in and yelled at him, "Your partner is right outside. If you don't get out now, you won't even get to see your own child." The day of the kidnapping, just moments before it happened, I was on the phone with Chase. Jason had forbidden me from contacting him, but since he wasn't around, I took the chance to call and let him know I was okay. Suddenly, I was abducted. After Jason took Cameron, the kidnappers confirmed they had the money, tied me to a chair, and planned to burn me alive to destroy the evidence. I struggled with all my might, but it was useless. But thankfully, just as the flames licked the edge of my clothes, Chase appeared. He was out of breath, his hands trembling as he untied the ropes and carried me out of the garage. The shock sent me into premature labor. After giving birth, I lost all my strength and was kept alive by machines in the intensive care unit. When I woke up, Jason was at the door, arguing with Chase. He couldn't understand. It was just childbirth, so why was I in the ICU? He thought I was angry at him, that I was avoiding him. Chase, unable to take it anymore, told him the truth. Does he even need a reason to avoid you? Evan has had stomach cancer for a while now. He was going to die just to have this baby and give you your freedom. Jason, you son of a bitch, you played with his heart. Jason froze. He stood there for a full 10 seconds before shaking his head in disbelief. What are you talking about? Stop lying to me. If Evan doesn't want to see me, fine, but don't you dare curse him. Did you think he was really vomiting blood that day because he ate something bad? That was his illness acting up, and he made me swear not to tell you. He wanted to use the baby to give you your freedom, to help you be with the person you love. He wanted you to be happy. By the end, Chase's eyes were wet, and his voice choked up. Jason, if I had known you would treat him like this, I would have snatched him away from you back then, even if it meant he hated me for it. It would be better for him to hate me than to just disappear from this world, to never be seen again. Later, Jason found out that everything Chase said was true. He even found the torn pieces of the ultrasound from the day I was diagnosed, and discovered the fragments of the terminal diagnosis tucked inside. If they had been in love, they could have had another child later. There was no rush, but he, with his own hands, had torn apart my will to live. The pain in Jason's heart was suffocating. What made him despair even more was when his secretary discovered that the kidnapping wasn't orchestrated by his grandfather. It was a setup by Cameron. 2 years ago, Grandpa had given him $0 million to leave the country. After squandering it all on gambling, he came back to leech off Jason again. When Jason kicked him out, he designed the kidnapping plot. If Jason saved me, he would split the ransom with the kidnappers and fake his death to leave the country. If Jason saved him, the kidnappers would kill me, and he could get back to Jason's side to keep getting money. From the very beginning, Cameron's return was all about the money. Jason locked him in the basement and tortured him until he finally confessed to all the framing, scheming, and the things he had done to me in private. When Cameron finally emerged from the basement, he had lost his mind. He was sent to a psychiatric hospital, never to see the light of day again. Lately, I've been asleep more than I've been awake. I barely managed to open my eyes to see Chase in a protective suit, holding the baby for me to see. He was premature and had just been taken out of the incubator. He was wailing, but when he touched my face, he suddenly stopped crying. I didn't have the strength to lift my arms to hold him, so I just pulled my lips into a smile. Chase helped the baby touch my hand. Jason stood outside the door, watching the scene, his eyes so red they looked like they could bleed. It was regret, resentment, but most of all, it was pain. He had been standing guard outside my door for 3 days. I had finally woken up, but Chase refused to let him in. This public hospital wasn't his territory. He pressed himself against the large window, refusing to eat or drink, just continuing his vigil. The baby, tired from touching me, was soon put back in his cradle. Chase glanced at the man outside the door, then turned back to me with a frown. "Do you want to see him? He says he's recovered his memories and found out the truth about everything. He wants to apologize." I couldn't sign, so I just shook my head. Chase smiled in relief. "He also said he was going to confess to you on the day of the kidnapping. That even though he lost his memory, he had fallen in love with you all over again and wanted to start fresh after the baby was born. What a fucking act." Chase rolled his eyes, furious. If he really had no second thoughts, he wouldn't have left you to save Cameron that day. Understand? "Evan, don't be fooled by his sweet talk again." He made me smile. I nodded. Then, with great effort, I raised my hand, which was covered in tubes, and removed my oxygen mask. Chase unconditionally helped me, asking in a choked voice, "What do you want to do?" "I'll do it for you." I smiled at him. I mouthed the words, "I will never see Jason again." Maybe it was from the moment he chose to believe Cameron, or maybe even earlier. I had already let him go, along with all our memories. That night, Jason kept watch until late. Finally, Chase came out of the room holding the baby. This time, Chase didn't ignore him. He placed the baby in Jason's arms. He said the divorce papers are in the 3rd drawer of the living room table. "Sign them." Jason's heart sank. Chase continued, "He doesn't want anything. He just wants you to live well and raise the child. If you can, he hopes you can give the child a happy family, so he doesn't end up like him." Those last words caught in Chase's throat, and he couldn't say them. Those weren't my final words. They were what I had said to him. "I'm sorry, and thank you." When Jason got home, he found the divorce papers. My signature was already on them. A layer of dust had settled on the papers, as if they had been sitting there for a very, very long time. He slowly tried to figure it out. How long ago had Evan decided to let go? A month ago? 6 months ago? Or was it during all those nights he had deliberately stayed at the office, leaving Evan to wait alone at a table full of food that had gone cold? He had trampled on a heart full of sincerity. Now he was tasting what it felt like to be riddled with holes. He signed the divorce papers in the end. Even so, Evan never agreed to see him again. Not even before he died. Evan's ashes ended up in Chase's hands. One afternoon, Chase took away all of his belongings, leaving not a single thing behind. Chase handled all the funeral arrangements himself, never letting Jason get anywhere near. He sneered at Jason. You hurt him so deeply. This disgusting, fake display of devotion will only taint his path to reincarnation. Understand? Jason cried with regret until he couldn't stand. But in the end, he never even found out where Evan's grave was. The only thing Evan left him was their child. When the child smiled, he looked so much like Evan. For the rest of his life, he was destined to watch over their child, living in eternal regret.